All right, so we're going to start with Lisa, and I'm not going to read everything that is on the slide, but uh, Lisa is serving as our moderator among her many, many hats. She serves as the chair for the Savvy Ladies Board. She is one of the top matrimonial attorneys in New York. As I said, I'm not going to read everything, but Lisa is also our amazing co-host for our Savvy Ladies Power of the Ass podcast. So if you get a chance, please check that out. You will love it. We also have Amy Holtzman joining us. She owns her own firm in New York. She works with wills, trust, estate planning, and so much more. And we're also so pleased to have two amazing representatives from The Real Real with us tonight. We have Dahlia Taylor, and she's the Associate Director, uh, and Jennifer Hansen, who is a luxury manager there. So we thank you all for joining and giving your time to Savvy Ladies. And really, without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Lisa to get this started.
All right. So good evening, everyone. And we're really excited. We have a lot of material to cover tonight. So we're going to get started very quickly. And we're going to get all the panelists involved. And just as a little background, we have both Jennifer and Dahlia from The Real Real. We're going to be doing a major event with The Real Real actually in both April and in May, and we'll put up the information for that, Tracy, into the chat if you can do that. And we are also have Amy Holtzman, who is phenomenal and is basically a guru on trusts and estates, and also prenups and postnups. And I often turn to Amy when we are actually working on agreements because she is able to deal with some of the tricky little issues about sometimes some real estate or estates and trust issues in agreements when we are actually going through the divorce. She also is very aware of what separate property is and what marital property is. So she wears a lot of hats, and Amy and I very often work together. She is actually of counsel to my firm, and I utilize her services quite a bit actually. As I said, I also have questions here from people, so I will try to get to everybody's question. You can also put questions in the chat. Last time around, we were very good about getting through, I think, most of the questions in the chat. So, but feel free to add questions to the chat as well. And I'm just going to start actually with our folks from The Real Real. And Dahlia, the first question is for you. What is The Real Real, and what does The Real Real do?
Thank you so much, Lisa, for that question. Yeah, so if you don't know about The Real Real, we are an online marketplace and retailer that specializes in the sale of authenticated luxury goods. We focused on all high-end items, so designer clothing, designer handbags, designer jewelry, watches, fine art, all of the good stuff. Essentially, you can sell your pre-owned luxury goods to The Real Real. We authenticate it, and you can sell it through our online marketplace, and you can also sell it through our stores. I've got a couple of bullet points of what we are just as a brand. We were founded in 2011. We are female founded, female ran. Our current CEO is Rati Levesque. She was employee one and is now our CEO, and was appointed, I want to say, in the fall. So we're so happy to be sort of like see that growth with her and her belief in this brand. We're the world's largest online marketplace for authenticated resale luxury goods. We have 37 million members, 40 million items sold to date on our site, and we paid out 4 billion in commissions to date. So just some fun facts to let you guys know the breadth of who we are, how big we are, and truly we're very excited to be here.
So I bet some of you want to know why do we have The Real Real here? And I'm just going to say that the reason The Real Real is working with Savvy Ladies, and we're working with The Real Real, and particularly for this divorce panel, is we tend to have a lot of clients actually who are using The Real Real to sell items, and sometimes, frankly, after their divorce. and sometimes during their divorce, to help with other expenses that they might have. So for example, it may tide them over in terms of some support issues. It may also tide them over in terms of legal fees or expert fees, or perhaps they just need a bridge to get to that next step. And so the Real Real is a good source. And I often have clients who are actually using the Real Real. And that's the reason actually we have the Real Real here. So I want it to be clear that it's not just an accident. We just didn't pull them from our hats here. We actually, there's a reason. And a lot of our clients, some of which may be on tonight, actually have used the Real Real to do this. They are a fabulous online source, but they also have stores. And I will tell you, I have gone into their stores. Their stores are great, and the discounts are fabulous, and the products are good, and they are a good source for actually cleaning out that closet at some point, and kind of restructuring. Maybe if you're restructuring how you want your branding to be, in terms of maybe you're going back to work or you're doing some other things, it might be a good place to actually look to both buy or sell some goods. So that is the story there. And Jennifer, I'm going to ask you, can you explain resale versus retail pricing to our peeps here?
Sure. I mean, there is, of course, a difference between retail pricing and resale pricing. Retail would be the manufacturer's price, that when you buy it from the store, let's say you walk into the Chanel store and you purchase a bag from Chanel, the price that's given to that handbag, that's the retail price. A resale price would be a good that has an item that's already been purchased. You've taken it out of the store, if it's arrived at your house in a package, you own it now. And then you go and you resell it. You're putting it out on a marketplace like the Real Real, or maybe your local consignment store, but it is no longer being purchased from the manufacturer. It's being purchased from someone else who's already purchased it from the manufacturer.
For the people who want to sell some of their items, what actually impacts the value? So, so I'm going to start by saying a lot of the time when we have cases and we have appraisals of jewelry and appraisals of handbags, sometimes if there's expensive handbags. We've had a lot of handbag appraisals recently. They may be appraisals of things that you have not thought of that actually, so maybe your spouse has a great watch, okay, an expensive watch, for example, or watch collection or any of those kinds of things. Those may be items actually that in your divorce could be actually of value. They could be an asset and they need to be valued. You can't just overlook them as if they didn't exist. And so those kinds of items, sometimes we get appraisals. Now, sometimes your spouse may say, well, you've got this great handbag collection or you've got this great jewelry collection. And the question is, what is that really worth out there? And so, Jen, explain to us what factors impact value.
Sure. I mean, it depends on several different factors primarily. Of course, there's the designer, the condition of the item, if it's pristine, if you bought something and it's been sitting in the box or sitting untouched this whole time, it will probably have more value than that same item, almost definitely, than that same item that's been used and worn. So the condition of the item, recency, how current is it? Authenticity, of course, that goes without saying. And, the marketplace also plays a role in what retains value, what's in demand, what is being purchased. And those are all factors that the Real Real takes into account when assessing an item and providing a valuation for, let's say, a high value handbag or fine jewelry or designer jewelry. And we have experts that are well versed in these things and can assign value, with a great deal of confidence based on all those factors.
Now, Dahlia, can you explain to us, well, before I get to Dahlia, what designers and brands retain the most value, Jen?
Well, so For jewelry, we're actually just talking about this in a team meeting recently. Some of for jewelry pieces that such as like Van Cleef, like that can sell for near retail, sometimes above retail, and that is an anomaly, insofar as resale. Typically, resale sells for less than what you would purchase it for at retail. Tiffany is our most searched jewelry brand. Insofar as handbags, there's like Chanel, there are some specific bags like the Margot bag from the Row that is, it's very much covetable. It's very highly in demand. Chanel, Prada, Gucci, Loewe, the Row. And, once again, sometimes some of these are kind of marquee brands that have been around in the market. Hermes, of course. I'm sorry, I can't believe I didn't mention that one. So yes, it's also like Van Cleef. It can sell for retail or above. It depends on the bag and the marketplace.
And if
I-
someone, go ahead, I'm sorry,
I was
John.
gonna say, surprisingly, Jen and I were talking about this yesterday. It's pretty interesting. Like, you don't realize what, think about it. These are shoppers that are looking and getting clicks for things, right? They're favoriting things. So like, if you don't have an Hermes Kelly in your closet, that's okay. But if you have Tiffany jewelry, that is one of our high demand pieces. Everybody's got a little bit of Tiffany. They have a daughter that's recently had, Sweet 16 or something of the sort, right? Something celebratory, graduation gift. People resell that and they sell pretty fast. And so I would say don't always, yes, value. And these are things that sort of retain Van Cleef, Bulgari. Those are like pretty like Coach. Yeah, I think somebody just wrote in Coach. Coach is now back in sort of demand, which it's sort of like, I think that's how we understand like our marketplace. Like, it depends on what's sort of happening in the business, in luxury. There's highs and lows. I remember when Bottega wasn't so hot, and then 4 years after that, it sort of had this big boom. And I think just kind of taking stock of what's in your closet, always having like a great relationship with your sales rep, like Jen, like myself, just to kind of keep you updated on what's really hot, what's selling, what to keep, what to store away. Because once you open up your closet, everybody's got a little piece of something that they can sell and earn some money on.
And I think that's key, is to make sure that you get a sales rep, you get connected with a sales rep if this is something that you want to do, if you want to sell something. And I would also say, if you're going through a divorce, you want to keep track of what you have sold. So it's really important. You are, and this is for New York, so I'm going to say this, okay? In New York, you are allowed to sell certain things, even though your divorce has started. So remember that in New York, there is something called automatic orders, okay? And I see some nods, okay? So everybody knows what I'm talking about. And those automatic orders do not allow you to do certain things. But one of the things that you can do, okay, you can sell items in order to pay for your expenses, your reasonable expenses. You can sell items to pay for counsel fees. You can sell items to pay for professional fees. You need an expert, a forensic expert, and maybe the court hasn't given you enough money to pay for your forensic expert, or maybe you're waiting for an application to the court to be decided. You can sell some of these items, okay, and start to have some cash flowing for yourself. Maybe somebody's not giving you enough support, okay? This might be another solution during that time period while you're waiting for some of these things to be straightened out. Now, a cautionary tale, okay? Just consult with your attorney first, okay? Because every case is different, okay? So make sure that you consult with your attorney and ask them, is this okay? This is what I would like to do. Does this make sense to do this, okay? And this way you're not just going out there and doing stuff and your attorney's like, why did you do that? Well, I listened to this woman on Zoom and she told me to go do that. Okay, so make sure you consult with your counsel in order to do this. If someone wants to do this, and this question can be for either one of you, if somebody wants to do this, how does the consignment process work?
Yeah, I can take that one. You and Jen, hop in if I'm missing any like details there, but you essentially create an account So you can go on our site, you can create an account, create a login. You can choose the method of consigning. So if you want to have a concierge rep come into your home, and that is our biggest method. So Jen and I are field, we work in the field. So we go to your home, we service you, we sort of like scan your closet. We do a little bit of like, what do you have? We try to get to know a little bit about some of the pieces that you're really interested in selling. And then we can go through the process of just kind of going through your items line by line. What we can do is we can give you like estimate of like how much we think this could potentially sell. So we have experts that we sort of have on our app that can tell you, okay, give us some sort of guidance on like, okay, this specific bag or this belt or these sunglasses, right? Kind of give you a range. And then we sort of work in partnership to get your items uploaded. We take them, they go through the process of authentication. So we either take them to our stores to get them authenticated by our experts, or we send them to our authentication center, which are local and local to New York and New Jersey. And we get them authenticated. We have a team of experts in technology that actually goes through, number one, is this an actual piece, brand? Does the condition look fair? Does it look pristine? Does it look excellent? We sort of like tag it as such. Then we sort of move through the process. We take a picture of these items, we get them loaded, and then during this process, we'll be able to sort of let you know what that price is a little bit more exactly, to what you could potentially be earning, and then your items sell. And you sort of can watch your items as you get some, I think you get like alerts, and it lets you know like, great, your Margot sold, or yes, this t-shirt that you just consigned sold, and this is the price that it sold for, and this is what you're going to be earning in commission. And you can kind of tally up. The good thing is I kind of think of it as like not a game, but you almost see like what you're earning go in. And once things sells, you can even see if people have obsessed your item, right? So that's kind of like the fun in it. Also, you're earning money and you're kind of seeing people sort of obsess over some of your items, and then you get your commission check.
Absolutely. There's just one other piece, just
Go ahead, Jen.
you had mentioned, and I think this is really important to note, like you have to keep track of what you're selling. And one of the really lovely qualities about working with The RealReal is that on your dashboard, or basically your portal, when you log into your account on The RealReal, you can see every item that is listed that you have consigned. You can see what it's sold for, what your commission was. You can also see before it sells, how many people liked it, how many people hearted it, or in RealReal speak, we're coveting and obsessing over your item. But it will track exactly what you've sold, what is for sale, and how much everything has been sold for, what your cut is, what your commission is.
It also, I'm going to say a couple of things about it. So during your matrimonial action, okay, if you're going through a divorce, you may be asked to provide documentation about this. And keep in mind, and maybe The RealReal isn't so crazy about this part, but I will say that we have subpoenaed, okay, certainly The RealReal, okay, when we represent a spouse, okay, because we want that documentation. Okay, so for example, if Jen, okay, was getting divorced and we want the documentation of what Jen has sold, okay, we may subpoena The RealReal for that information. That information is not going to be confidential during your divorce. It's part of a discovery process, okay? So it's better, so we don't have all the subpoenas flying around, if you keep the information, and to Jen's point, okay, that you could actually just turn it over to the other side as part of what you're doing, okay? It's not a secret, okay? It's like, and it shouldn't be a secret because you needed the money probably, or you wanted to sell it, or whatever the reason was, okay? You decided you were going to sell these items. And so keeping track and the fact that The RealReal keeps track is hugely important and helpful, okay? Because it allows you to just literally print it. Am I correct, Jen? And turn it over in Discovery.
You could print it, you have all the dates too that things have sold. So if you need to give, which you probably would need to give a very exact timelines of like what was sold, how much, when it was sold, you know, all of those different things. And it also could help you organize, you know, where did it go? Was it paid to so-and-so, or did it go into your bank account or what have you? But you'll have from the real dates and amounts that you can, that are, you know, at your fingertips on your dashboard and readily available.
It also gives you an idea for someone who's trying to appraise your items at too high a price, okay, for what they're actually worth. It actually shows what they're actually worth. And that is also really, really helpful for people. So in terms of, is it possible for people to understand what price this high value item will be listed for prior to consigning it? How does that work for either one of you?
So if you, I can speak to that. And Dahlia, if you think of anything, if I've left anything out, please feel free to jump in. So for a high value item, there are several ways that we can address, you know, assessing the value so that you know what your item could be worth, what it could sell for. And if it's a handbag or it's a piece of designer jewelry or fine jewelry, we can make an appointment for our clients, for consigners at the store, whether it's in Greenwich or in Soho, with one of our experts. And they will examine the item and they will provide a valuation that is valid for 30 days. It's non-binding. It's not like you have to leave your piece there. It's a service that we offer without a fee associated with it. So, you know, it'll give you an exact amount that your item will be listed for. You'll know exactly what you'd be consigning it for. And, you know, if you don't like it, you don't have to consign it. So if you don't agree with the valuation, but if you change your mind or you want to think about it, that's okay too. You know, sometimes you don't want to make a decision on the spot, and that's all right. There's another way we can also provide a range of pricing for items. We have a remote valuation process where if I'm in your home, for example, because I see clients in their houses primarily or apartments and wherever it is that they're living. And, you know, if they have a handbag that has, you know, that they'd like to know how much would this possibly garner on the market, you know, the market, how much would this be listed for roughly, but they don't really necessarily feel like going to an appointment. We can take pictures of the item, send it remotely to one of our experts who's sitting on the other end of the app, essentially, and they will provide a range based on, you know, the recency, condition, designer, and market. And the reason it's a range, not an exact price, is because they need to really see the item in person to assess the condition and what have you. But if somebody decides to consign based on that valuation, which can happen while you're sitting there at a live appointment, you know, sometimes I've had clients send things to me as well before appointments. And so I can provide them with the pricing before I go in. But, you know, that expert's name and that range is attached to that item in their, you know, in their consignment. So everyone has the same information. And that's pretty much those are the two best ways to get a firmer understanding of value.
And Dahlia, can you tell me, how do the consigners receive the payment for their sold items? What happens? How do they get their money?
Yeah. So there's three ways you can get paid. You can select your form of payment on the actual dashboard. You can choose direct deposit. You can choose check by mail, or you can use site credit. And essentially the site credit is tacked onto your dashboard and you can use that to shop and sort of keep the circular market kind of going. We also have a really great program called Get Paid Now. So depending on the brand, that sort of fluctuates, but for now, it's a few brands that we have. You can actually go to the stores, get your items evaluated, priced, and you can determine if you want to sort of, I mean, it's a couple of other companies have this, but you can sort of say, okay, I don't necessarily want to consign, but I want to sell this Rolex today. And Jen, do you know the timeline on sort of what that's paid out on? I want to say it's 2 weeks, but I don't want to
I don't even think it's that long. I think that once you accept the evaluation and if it's provided that you have direct deposit set up already, like all of the things are set up accordingly, you have to approve the get paid now pricing. So in person, if you've sent it in remotely, then you have to like send written permission, which could delay, but I believe I think it's like 48 hours. I can check just to double check. Because it's an electronic payment into your account.
Yeah, it's a great program. And again, it's only a few designers that we offer that we're doing this program with. But we had a resounding, this is exactly what the consignor wants. They want more of these sort of options to sell their goods. And this gives this group here another way of just how can I earn money if I don't have the time for consignment? If I, it just sort of gives you a little bit more options, I guess, to sort of release your luxury goods.
Now, we are
24 to 48 hours, just to
Oh,
clarify.
oh, well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So how do, we are doing a program, how do people sign up? And maybe we can do the slideshow there, Tracy?
And actually, there's a question for you while I'm trying to figure out my 3 screens here. What about
people
out-of-state?
out of state? Okay, so who wants to take that in terms of one of you? If you're out of state, how do you do this?
Go
What,
ahead.
do we know what state it is? Could somebody tell us what state it is? Because that might make a difference. Ah, Tennessee.
Tennessee. We are in Tennessee. So we are all over. I'm not sure if we have actual field reps in Tennessee, but we can link you with an actual rep who can service you in the method that, for instance, if someone's not able to go into the home, they can definitely call you. We can send you a label, we can get your items in, and the relationship can be built sort of virtually. So we have sales reps and teams sort of all over the country. And you have full access to us as long as you sign up. Someone will always be in touch with you that's from the field. So don't worry about how far and how wide. Of course, in concentrated areas like New York, where I'm at, and New Jersey and Connecticut and so forth, we have a lot of people sort of here, but we do have stores in different states. We have sales reps in every state. So you are not sort of alone in this consignment process or journey.
Okay, so there is, and I think this person also has a home in Michigan, if I got this right. And so is there a Michigan, is there a place in Michigan?
It's a Michigan team.
Okay, so,
And the shipping label that Dahlia mentioned is also free of charge. So if you have items that you would like to send in, that is something that we're happy to help with. And we try to make it as easy and seamless a process for the consignor as possible. We want it to be easy for you. We want you to be able to send your items in and, not have to think about the process anymore. We can take care of all the photography, the copy, the listing, and then you can just, watch the process and from consigning your item to the sale of your item. And that's really all you'd have to do. That's the whole point, is that we want to make this as easy as possible with like a very simple platform. So for understanding what's going on with your items.
and we have put a QR code for anyone who would like to have the QR code up there. Just go back to the QR. Can you put the QR code into the chat by any chance?
Yes, this
Okay, if you could do that and then
this
take it off the screen.
document is linked in the chat, so all you have to
That's
do is
great.
click on it.
Okay, so everybody can just click on it. And in the meantime, I'm going to move over to Amy, okay, Holtzman, and we're going to get an education about how, what separate property is, Amy, and how we deal with separate property and how we keep separate property separate.
I'm going to answer that question, but I also want to talk about in estate planning, I have lots of people who have valuable high-end items. And so when you're meeting with your attorney to do your will or your trust, you have to be very clear. Like there's a general language about personal effects. If you actually have valuable, and I like handbags and shoes and what have you, you want to make a special clause, because what you don't want is that, like, you have all sons who are going to go through and go, oh, you know, let's give this to charity, when you have items that are really particularly of great value that you should be actually listing, not necessarily those items, but say like luxury handbags, luxury, whatever you might have. It would probably also be a good idea to put with your documents where they could be sold, like to list, not necessarily real in your documents, but to give a little roadmap to whoever's left behind. So again, that they don't just, you know, load everything up to Salvation Army or Goodwill. They actually get it to the right, or the garbage, you know, because they don't know any better. Now, in terms of separate property, it's interesting. A lot of people believe that if they're married and they keep assets in their own name during the marriage that they've earned during the marriage, they're like, oh, that's my separate property. Well, then they're very surprised to find out that that's not their separate property if it was earned during the marriage. It is not necessarily that you keep it in a separate, you know, you just keep it separate, and somehow, even though it was accumulated during marriage, and you could be on either side of that coin. You could be thinking your assets are separate because you're just putting it together, you know, putting it in a separate account, etc. Or you could think your spouse's assets are separate, when in fact they are earned during marriage. What I want people to be particularly aware of, though, is prior to getting married, it's important that if you have premarital assets, you have inherited, or you have inherited assets, you will have inherited assets or gifted assets. What we like to do is put that in some sort of trust to earmark those as your separate assets, and then not put in asset, like, you don't want to take your inheritance and you have, let's say, that in a brokerage account, and then at the same time you're putting in your paycheck, right? I'm giving whatever 10% of my paycheck to that account. Now I've commingled that, and it becomes very difficult to sort out what was separate property and what wasn't separate property. So it's always a good idea, regardless, to know which of your assets are separate and which ones are not.
So Amy, I have a question here that was given to me before we started, and it's perfect question here. And this is somebody who is in the process of getting a divorce, and they were in the process of starting to do their first will / POA medical directive, when they felt it was necessary to file for divorce. And they are saying that they are now stuck in limbo. So can you talk a little bit about this? They ask, their understanding is that one cannot create these documents until the divorce process has concluded. And while the will doesn't concern the person terribly, as it sounds that as if there would be a process in place if the person did actually become deceased, the lack of appointed person to make medical decisions on their behalf is concerning. Can we talk about that
Sure.
particular issue? Because that is a serious issue, and that is right in your wheelhouse, frankly.
Yes, and I'm not a matrimonial attorney. This is where I, you know, so pipe in, Lisa.
Yep.
My understanding of these orders, again, not being a matrimonial attorney, is you're not, once you file, you're not allowed to change the beneficiary on assets. You're not allowed to change the ownership. That needs to stay in place. So I'm going to back up for 2 seconds. If you're in the middle of doing estate planning and the light bulb goes off, maybe I should get divorced. Maybe you should have already had those documents in place. You know, if you're having questions about, I don't think I want to be with my spouse, I'm not sure. Well, I know why. You weren't thinking of it exactly at the time, that you probably should have done some documentation beforehand, but you didn't. Fast forward. I believe you're allowed to execute documents. You're just not allowed to change anything. So you're not allowed to change the ownership. And in New York, spouse, if you should die during this process, which I've had happen, spouses are entitled generally to a third of your assets. If you have, a will, you can give, for example, everything to your spouse, your children. Your spouse is still going to be able to go in and get a third. If you don't have anything in place, the general rule is if you only have a spouse, everything goes to the spouse. If you have children, the first 50,000 goes to the spouse, and then it's to spouse and the other 50 to children. Direct beneficiary designations are going to supersede only to the extent that your spouse still gets that third. In terms of powers of attorney and healthcare proxies, you should be able to change those documents. You don't have to sit there and say the person I'm divorcing is going to make life or death decisions. So I would think that would be a run and not walk to execute those documents. They are actually really simple to put together.
So Amy, I'm going to say that everyone who is going through a divorce, okay, should at least take the time to think about what they are doing in terms of healthcare proxies, in terms of their wills, okay? They should take a pause, okay? Because sometimes I'm going to say people don't think about this, okay? They should pause and they should think about, do I want somebody else making the decision that maybe I was okay having my spouse make, okay? If I was to be in a medical crisis, do I want somebody else making those decisions for me as I'm going through this divorce? Or maybe I've finished my divorce. Some of you may be finished. Some of you may be in the middle. Some of you may be thinking about all of this, okay? Do I want somebody else making those decisions? And if you do, then you need to actually retain an attorney likely, okay, who specializes in this area. In our case, we utilize Amy because she's good and she's efficient. But essentially, you need to deal with that particular issue. That is an important issue. And we have definitely seen people in medical crises during their divorce action, and people, frankly, who have even passed away during a divorce. And you really want to think about this. You're also correct, Amy, that you can't just change the beneficiaries of things. So while you can change your will, okay, you can't, for example, go to your retirement account, your 401k, your IRA, whatever, and just now that you started your divorce action, there is, remember I said that automatic order? That automatic order prohibits you from changing beneficiaries on accounts. So be very clear. That's a New York thing. I don't know about the other states. Somebody here was in Tennessee or Michigan. So be careful. Make sure you get counsel in your state that will answer those questions. But in New York, you cannot change the beneficiaries. That goes for life insurance also, everybody. So if you're going through your divorce, you've already started an action, you definitely can't do it, okay? If you've been served, you can't do it, okay, if you're in New York. So that's really
important. But you can do it beforehand. So lots of people have a divorce consultation before getting divorced. I mean, that's the natural course. And a lot of matrimonial attorneys, not Lisa, but a lot of matrimonial attorneys are like, deal with that later. I can't impress upon people, and I want to make sure everyone understands what a healthcare proxy is. A healthcare proxy is a document that says, if I can't make my own medical decisions, I want someone to advocate on my behalf. It is, sometimes people get confused and they think it's a do not resuscitate or you're pulling the plug somehow. I mean, that could be the case if there's no reasonable hope for recovery. I'm not sure that you'd want someone you're divorcing from to make that decision. But certainly you'd want to pick your best advocate to do that. And it is probably not the person you're getting divorced. And as I said, it's not a terribly complicated document to put together. So and then a power of attorney is a document that for someone to control your financial affairs. It lives with you and it dies with you. So if you were incapacitated, this person could probably still go on and, finalize the divorce if you're having some sort of issues that would give them legal authority.
I'm also going to say, if for some reason people die during the divorce, you're right about the third, but if there's a beneficiary, a right of survivorship, it's going to automatically go to the other person. Okay, if your divorce is not,
And that will add into the third. So
yes,
if you had, for example, a brokerage account that did not have a beneficiary on it, you would want to go and take care of that. Also, importantly, if you have minor children and you don't have documents in place, the surviving parent is going by default to be the person who's going to be able to petition the court and get control of assets. So you might, in fact, you probably would, in fact, want to name somebody else who would be in charge of your assets. That would be a trustee. You'd want to set up something to say, and unfortunately, we have a number of clients whose spouses have done some pretty bad things with their finances. They would be exactly the wrong people to be in charge of children's money. So I think it's of primary importance that you would really consider those decisions as you are going through a divorce. And then after the divorce, you have a place to put everything. So as you're dividing assets, like often we do now, revocable trust to avoid probate, to avoid going to court, which you have to do on a will. If you already have that trust set up, when you get assets, you can just simply transfer it in there. You don't have to transfer it to your name and then transfer it somewhere else. So there's a certain efficiency there as well.
okay, so there's a question that somebody has asked, and I'm going to answer this question first. How does one, so there's two parts to this. How does one pick an accountant that handles high income divorces? I would say that you go to your attorney for some recommendations. They're probably going to know some recommendations. You might go to your financial advisor as well. If you have a financial advisor, they might have some recommendations for you. So these are definitely places to go. Sometimes even therapists that you might be seeing, they may have actually some recommendations for you. So all three of those professionals who might be in your life would probably have some recommendations for you. And then there's a question about credit cards, and I was told not to pay my credit cards, but I feel like having a good credit score would help in the long run. I'm not really sure why somebody would tell you not to pay your credit cards, except that perhaps they want to make sure that somebody else is going to pay them later. Okay. And so I do think that you would want to make the minimum payment, okay, so that you don't get a bad credit score. But that's something that you've got to go over with your counsel, because that is an individual situation, I think, that you're best served actually going through with your counsel. So I'm going to go back to Amy for a second here. So Amy, I have had a lot of cases recently where people come to me and their spouses have moved monies, okay, and put them into these irrevocable trusts. And they have said that it is for the good of the children, okay, that they are creating these irrevocable trusts. And they may do them years ahead of time before a divorce action occurs, okay? And the concern that now they have is, well, there may not be enough money now to divide and for each of the spouses to live, frankly, the way that they were living before and the lifestyle that they were accustomed to. And you and I have done one of these cases, actually. So talk to us about that. Like, what should people be thinking about when they're creating these irrevocable trusts in terms of perhaps divorce planning?
So I think people need to be very careful and not check out when they're meeting with their estate planning attorney. In the cases we have, it's, first of all, if there are two clients there, you're actually supposed to represent both of them. But in the cases we've seen, I'm going to say the representation has been pretty light or non-existent, or frankly, contrary to one spouse in favor of the other spouse. So I think whether it's your finances or your estate plan, you should ask some questions. If you're not getting the right answers, maybe ask to change counsel, or at least say, I'm a client too. So if there are any irrevocable transfers, I think you need to ask why and can you be included? So let me just say that when I do irrevocable transfers as part of someone's estate plan, which is usually they have a high net worth, we're trying to move assets and the appreciation out of their name. You're allowed to gift in a legally permissible way. There's a combined gift and estate tax exemption. But oftentimes what I do is, let's say, for example, the husband is the high earner and he has a lot of assets, company assets in his name that the wife can't possibly have. And the suggestion is that they're going to do this irrevocable trust. I usually say, put your wife in it. We have no expectation that she's going to use these funds. But if things fall apart, if the market falls apart, we don't need your children. I mean, even on a practical level, even if you were not getting divorced, we don't need your children wealthy and you don't have sufficient assets in your own name. So there are ways of doing this. I think this is savvy ladies. So, women need to stick up for themselves and just ask questions and not sit there and go, oh, this is very technical. Oh, the accountant's talking, the attorney's talking. This is very technical. You can ask for it to be explained. I write it down. If someone's doing an irrevocable trust, I have 0 irrevocable trust going out without a cover letter, without something saying what is going on and what it means. So I'm going to presume that people can read, and they should ask for it also to be explained to them and then written down, so that at a quiet time they can sit and look at it, and if they still can't understand, they can go back and ask questions.
And I'm going to say that, the cases that we worked on where there was huge transfers of money, okay, a lot of people were kept in the dark. A lot of the wives were kept in the dark. And there was definitely not somebody explaining it to them. So if you're being approached to transfer monies, like, you need to actually think about it. Okay, it's, again, take that pause, think about it. Think about why you are transferring these monies. Go to see an attorney of your own, perhaps, okay, to get advice about whether you should transfer these monies. Make sure that the attorney who is representing you and your spouse is actually including you on all the emails, all the correspondence. The case that we had, the wife wasn't included in all the correspondence. It was going to the husband. The husband was then supposed to be turning it over to the wife. The husband probably wasn't turning it over to the wife. It was just, make sure that you are really being represented by counsel, because Amy's right. If it's counsel that is preparing trusts and wills and you're doing this together, then it should be something that you're both included in on every single step. So
a good question would be, what are the other options? So if someone's saying, you are doing this for tax reasons, what are the other options? Right? There are lots of, as I said, you could actually do irrevocable transfers. You can get your, a large amount out of your estate, and you can still put your spouse in. That is another option. So even if you don't know what those other options are, ask for exclamations, ask for options. If English is not your first language, ask for an explanation from someone who speaks your language, because already legalese, it's a language of its own. So if you have a language barrier on top of that, it's your right to ask for a translation.
And there's a question in the chat looking for a list of financial documents that need to be updated yearly. So I'm going to say before you jump in, Amy, and I know you have your own list, okay, that need to be updated. So I really watch my finances. Okay. I'm probably a little crazier than most. Okay. I wake up in the morning, I look at my balance sheets. I go to sleep at night, I look at my balance sheets. I have a conversation with my husband probably at least once a day. What's our numbers? Like I'm probably a little crazier than most. I know. Okay. We we brush our teeth on Saturday morning and I want to know what the numbers are. Okay. I go to the mailbox on Saturday and I open all the mail that's in there regardless. Like we're both look at the hearts. Yep. So I've been written about in the Wall Street Journal with my husband for this. Okay. I have what's called the mailbox rule. It's not that I don't trust my husband because frankly, I trust him implicitly. We've been married for 27 years, but routinely when we go down the driveway on Saturday morning for breakfast, I go to the mailbox and we sit in the car and I open all the mail. It doesn't matter whose name it is. I just open all the mail. Okay. And it's almost a joke because we have written about this now and people have written about this about us. And so he says, it's snowing. Okay. You're going to go to the mailbox. And I'll say, no, I will do it later. Oh no, you wrote about this. You go to the mailbox. This is like our morning joke. So but the point is that I think these budgets, okay, and I'm waiting for my spreadsheet for the year now, okay, which is like every year I want a spreadsheet of what we have spent, okay, and what all our assets are and what all the passwords are, okay, what all the passwords are and where everything is located and what all the deals that we're engaged in are. And that spreadsheet is like being worked on now, okay? And in between, I promise you, I'm asking almost every day, okay? And I understand it's a little crazy, but it's just who I am, okay? And but there are other documents that definitely do need to be updated. So for example, Amy, if you jump in, yearly.
So I'm going to speak to what you just said. Even if you're not as crazy or nearly as crazy as Lisa, and it's usually women, I don't know what I have. You haven't opened an account statement, you have no idea what you have, or you haven't gone online, you don't need to know it daily unless you're Lisa. But you should have an idea of what your assets are. That is just plain simple. When I prepare, I think the basic documents that someone needs and they should know what they are, they don't have to update them regularly, would be a will, a healthcare proxy, living will, and power of attorney. I also strongly encourage people to have, again, a revocable trust to avoid probate. There was a question in the chat like, hey, if I'm, a single mom, should I do this? Well, yes, even more so. Guess who you have to give in New York when someone dies? You have to give notice to next of kin. And if you have minor children, that's their other parent that you were divorced from. And you can avoid that by wrapping everything up in a trust. So that, okay, no children yet. But regardless, a will is believe it or not, a public document. Once you die, not when it's sitting in my office or in yours, but it becomes a public document when one dies. So everyone knows what you've done. A trust is a private document. So, and it is mostly, I design it to avoid probate, confidentiality. It's helpful if you want to keep other people's eyes and hands off your estate. You can be very, very protective. These are not necessarily documents that need to be updated every year. In fact, generally, I tell my clients, unless they have a major financial event or someone they put in their documents is inappropriate, then of course you should come back and update. It doesn't hurt to look at everything annually, but it doesn't necessarily need to be updated annually. But you should know if you've had an inheritance, a big bonus, a divorce, anything in either direction would be important to update your general documents.
And there's a note about a prenup, possible prenup, and if someone is getting married and has REITs, syndications, 401ks, brokerage accounts, antiques, collectibles, okay, plans to inherit properties, okay, starting a business, there is, I mean, I feel like there's zero question in my mind that
Run, don't walk.
like, yeah, you should be getting a prenup, okay? I mean, we do them all the time because that is your separate property right now. You do not want there to be an issue. And we started this whole event really after we heard from Dahlia and Jennifer about what separate property is. But you really want to have this prenup identify your separate property, because if it doesn't identify your separate property, if you don't identify your separate property, there is such a risk of converting it, transmuting it, commingling it into marital property if you are getting married. And so it's super important. And on top of it, yes, okay, Amy, a trust would be
What's nice about a trust is it puts a wrapper on your separate assets, so you know they're your separate assets, right? I did this trust in 2025 before I was married. It clearly didn't come into play afterwards. Sometimes I've done a trust, like a premarital trust, premarital assets, and a postmarital trust. I've even done for people who are getting divorced before they get divorced. Hey, here's my inherited property. Let's wrap that up in one way, and marital assets in a different trust. We know those might be subject to divorce, but at least the other assets aren't. I mean, I think everybody, you work hard for your assets, go and enjoy and spend them all. If, so long as you have some at the end of the day, but they should go wherever you want them to go. So you should really be thinking about where that is, which goes to the person who asked the question about, hey, single without children. I mean, I tell people, if you think you don't have a will, you do. New York State has done a will for you. So either you love the will New York State has dictated to you, or you don't. I mean, it's your assets. Make up your mind where you want them to go. I'm going to add one thing I have sometimes had someone want a prenup and their future spouse doesn't. And I think if these are your separate assets or your inherited assets, that raises some eyebrows for me. Why would assets you inherit from your parents, somehow your fiance thinks he or she is entitled to them? To me, that's illogical and concerning. Why are assets that you earned prior to being married, why does the person who you're getting married to think that he or she is entitled to them? I mean, on a very non-legal level, what's the thought process behind that? Which is not to say that when you get married, you could go share everything. I don't have a comment on that. You're welcome to do that. I do have some concerns that assets that someone has no part of, that they think they're entitled to half of it, and I think that merits a discussion.
So a couple of things. I just want to kind of cover a couple of things. So next week, Tracy, we have another program, and I believe we have Markham, which is a forensic accounting firm, speaking. And if you're going through a divorce or thinking about a divorce, Gary is fabulous. Gary Rosen is a forensic accountant. He's worked certainly with my firm quite a bit, and he also has given these talks for Savvy Ladies. He's great. And we also have coming on, Tracy, that same night. Can you give us a rundown?
Sorry, I'm going to talk and I'm muted. So I'm going to paste in the chat who we have. We also have Nikki Amore. She is a CFP, along many other titles that she has, that can talk to you about your creating your own finances and staying with that. We have Gary Rosen, and we also have Robin with us.
So Robin is actually going to talk to you about some ideas.
Oh, Lisa, somehow you got muted. I'm not sure how.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Okay. So Robin is great, and Robin will give you a lot of practical tips about going through a divorce. And she's fabulous. And Gary, as I said, forensic accountant, and then our lovely CFP who will talk about your net worth statement and how to deal with all of that. So that will be fabulous. There are also, so that is on next Tuesday, I believe, at 6 o'clock p.m. our time, Eastern time. And so you should tune in and bring a friend also. The other thing is that I want to talk about the events for the Real Real. And Jen, maybe you could talk about the 2 events that we're going to be hosting and when they're going to be.
Sure. So we are going to be hosting 2 events, as Lisa just mentioned, between Savvy Ladies and the Real Real, because the synergies seem to make a lot of sense. And the first event is going to be at the end of April during Financial Literacy Month. And we're very excited to be able to host this event at the store in Soho. This is just going to be a lot of fun. It'll be a VIP event. People will be able to bring high value items in to consign. And they can consign other items while they're there as well, or sign up to consign. And they'll also be able to benefit Savvy Ladies as a foundation and as a nonprofit by doing so. The other event is going to be in, I believe this is it the second week of May, right? And it'll be like at our Lisa's lovely Westchester office, and also we'll have opportunities for consignment that will benefit Savvy Ladies. It will enable new consigners. If you're interested in exploring this, you certainly can. And at both events, there'll be fireside chats. There'll be some keynotes. There's going to be a lot of great information about financial literacy and education. And the Real Real is happy to be on hand and part of these wonderful things. Did I leave anything out, Dahlia or Lisa?
No, but let me give you dates. Okay. So the Soho date is going to be on April 30th, just so you know. And it will, I believe, start at 6:30 or 7. Am I correct?
You are, but there'll also be an opportunity for people who can't make it to the event to consign ahead of time. So if you're, in the city, you're working in the city, or you're doing something else, you can feel free to stop by the store and consign items to benefit Savvy Ladies. I'll drop off your other items as well on that day before the event starts properly.
And then we will, as Jen said, on May 14th, right before Mother's Day, we will be actually doing a Mother's Day event at my office in White Plains. And that will be, again, you can bring items and it'll be an opportunity to consign, etc. Have a glass of champagne, get to meet some new people, all of that. And that will be on May 14th. Everybody will have to sign up for the event. It is by invitation, so you do need to sign up if you're going to do this. And you could also feel free to email, and I think Jen put in her email, if I'm not mistaken, into the chat.
And I just reinserted it. So
Okay.
there was also a QR code before that had like a link to Savvy. It was like a Savvy Ladies related Real link as well. But you can feel free to reach out to me via email, and I can, if I'm not the right person to help you, I will get you to the right person that can answer questions if you're in a different state or what have you. But please don't hesitate. We're happy to help.
And we're happy to work with you to gather your items earlier if you need to do that. So just let us know about that. And Jen will be a great contact person for doing this. So if there's no more questions, we'll end for tonight. And then we will regroup next Tuesday night. And I want to thank Dahlia and Jennifer and Amy and Tracy and everyone else for coming. And please listen to our podcast, The Power of the Ask. It's a very cool podcast. Lots of inspirational women who we speak to. And I hope this was helpful to everybody.
Thank you all for coming, and don't forget to visit our helpline to get your one-on-one question answered.
Thank you for having us on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.